I got a call from a Japanese diplomat, and he said, hey, let's have lunch. I said, great. So we meet at a restaurant on Capitol Hill. His English was so bad that we had to do the lunches in Arabic, right? He was an Arabist, and I'm an Arabist, and so we would have our lunches in Arabic. And I remember what we talked about in that first meeting. I know it's absurd, isn't it?
You and the Japanese guy speaking Arabic.
I'm surprised somebody didn't call the cops. Right. So we talked about the Israeli election, the Turkish election. We talked about the peace process. I remember it very clearly. And at the end of it, he said to me, so what's next for you? And I said, I think I'm going to resign soon. I promised Senator Kerry that I would give him 2 years. It's been 2.5, and I have 5 kids that I need to put through college. And he says, no, don't do that. If you give me information, I can give you money. And I said, what in the world is wrong with you? Do you have any idea how many times I've made that pitch? Shame on you for cold pitching me. And I indignantly got up and walked out, and I went directly without stopping to the office of the Senate security officer. And I said, I was just pitched by a foreign intelligence officer. I need to report it. He said, was it that damn Russian again? And I said, no, it was Japanese. He said, Japanese? Well, occasionally they're poking around looking for trade secrets. So he said, sit at this standalone computer, write it up, and I'll send it to the FBI. I said, fine. I wrote the entire thing as a memo. He sent it to the FBI. The next day, he calls me and says, 2 FBI agents are going to come up. They want to interview you. I said, great. I go back down to the security vault, and these 2 young FBI agents come. I tell them the story again, and they said, okay, here's what we want you to do. We want you to call him back and invite him to lunch and try to get him to tell you exactly what information he's looking for and what he's willing to pay for it. And because I'm a patriot, I said, do you want me to wear a wire or something? And they said, no, we'll just be at the next table. We'll listen to everything.
You're such a Boy Scout.
I know, right? I love my
mean,
country.
Everyone who lives in D.C. has had something like what you described, but I've never heard of anybody going to the authorities over it.
So the morning of the lunch, they called me and said, something came up, we can't do it. So do the lunch and write another memo. So I did. And I wrote up a comprehensive report. I sent it back to the FBI. Then they asked me to do it a 3rd time, a 4th time, and a 5th time, which I did. And in the final lunch, it was at a place in Georgetown.
Which place?
It was on Lower Wisconsin, the famous Italian place.
Where they give you after dinner drinks at the end.
Yes. And the ladies in the front window making the pasta.
Such a great restaurant.
Philomena, thank you. It's been forever.
Sorry. I love Philomena.
It's wonderful.
Sorry.
It really is wonderful. So I do it. And in that final lunch, he says, I got promoted. I got my dream job. I'm going to be the number 2 at the Japanese embassy in Cairo. I said, congratulations. I shook his hand. I never talked to him again. A year later, I've been arrested, and we get discovery, and we see that there never was any Japanese diplomat. He was an FBI agent.
What?
Trying to get me to commit actual espionage. But I kept reporting the meetings back to the FBI. And then there was a memo to Peter Strzok, who actually put the cuffs on me in 2012.
The Peter Strzok?
The Peter Strzok. He actually, I'll get to that in a second. But one of the FBI agents wrote to Peter Strzok and said, we should end this operation. He's clearly not going to take the bait.
No way!
And I said to my lawyer, why would they do this? I'm a patriot.
The FBI did that to you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because I hadn't committed espionage.
We got to burn the government down, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, that's...
Yeah. John Brennan specifically said, charge him with espionage. Well, I hadn't committed espionage. And so they're trying to get me to commit it so they can charge me. I kept reporting it back to them.
Who was the guy? The Japanese diplomat?
No, he was just an Asian FBI agent who didn't speak a word of Japanese, but he did speak Arabic. So he pretended...
Oh, no, you're blowing my mind.
He pretended to not speak English so that I wouldn't be alerted.
Are you sure this happened?
100%. It was all in the discovery.
So here's a company we're always excited to advertise because we actually use their products every day. It's Merriweather Farms. Remember when everybody knew their neighborhood butcher? You look back and you feel like, oh, there was something really important about that, knowing the person who cut your meat. And at some point, your grandparents knew the people who raised their meat so they could trust what they ate. But that time is long gone. It's been replaced by an era of grocery store mystery meat boxed by distant beef corporations. Ugh. None of which raised a single cow. Unlike your childhood, they don't know you, they're not interested in you. The whole thing is creepy. The only thing that matters to them is money, and God knows what you're eating. Merriweather Farms is the answer to that. They raise their cattle in the U.S., in Wyoming, Nebraska, and Colorado, and they prepare their meat themselves in their facilities in this country. No middlemen, no outsourcing, no foreign beef sneaking through a back door. Nobody wants foreign meat. Sorry, we have a great meat, the best meat here in the United States, and we buy ours at Merriweather Farms. Their cuts are pasture-raised, hormone-free, antibiotic-free, and absolutely delicious. I gorged on one last night. You got to try this, for real. Every day we eat it. Go to merriweatherfarms.com/Tucker. Use the code Tucker76 for 15% off your first order. That's merriweatherfarms.com/Tucker.
But Brennan said, charge him with espionage. And they were like, okay, well, we got to charge him with espionage.
We have to create the crime in order to fit the charge.
And what happened? They charged me with 3 counts of espionage.
Wait, how can you believe it? So, like, I have friends who have a lot of interesting information on the Oklahoma City bombing.
Ooh.
And my brain doesn't want to go there. Same with January 6th. Same with a bunch of different operations the FBI has been involved in where it seems pretty obvious they're trying to get people to commit felonies, acts of violence, acts of terrorism. And I'm like, I can't bring myself to believe that happens in the United States, but you're describing it.
Oh, Tucker, I was in prison with this poor guy. This guy was just a dope. And he and a couple of buddies were in a bar one day in Cleveland, and this other guy was there drinking with them, and he said, hey, you know what would be fun? We should blow up the Route 82 bridge. And they were saying, they were drunk. They said, yeah, that would be so much fun. I'll get the explosives. Well, he's an FBI informant. The FBI gives inert explosives. These idiots go out to the Route 82 bridge and try to blow it up. It doesn't blow up. And then the FBI comes out from behind the bushes. They got 20, 25, and 30 years in prison.
Why would they do that to these guys?
Why would they do that? It wasn't their idea to blow up the stupid bridge.
But why were they targeted?
Because this is how FBI agents get promoted. They don't get promoted by not arresting you. They get promoted by arresting you and heaping charges on you so that eventually you go bankrupt and you give up. And then they say, okay, here's the deal. We'll drop all the charges but one. You take a guilty plea to a felony and then you do, 2 years or whatever. But these guys went to trial because they said, no, it wasn't our idea. It wasn't our explosives. It was the FBI's explosives. And it was the FBI's guy that talked us into doing it. We were just having drinks that night. We weren't going to blow up a bridge. But that's how they get ahead in Washington.
But they're targeting American citizens for destruction.
Sure. That's what they do.
You need to shut down the FBI right away.
I would not object to that at all. And in my case, they charged me with 3 counts of espionage.
What is the fucking point of all of this? Yeah. Pay your taxes.
I know, right?
Hoist the flag on your front lawn. I do those things.
Yeah, I do too.
And then they try to destroy you?
Yeah.
Because your crime is you didn't like John Brennan when you both were junior guys at CIA.
Yeah. And
because you correctly said the president, George W. Bush,
was lying.
Because he is a liar, unfortunately. And so, let's spend millions of dollars and all this.
$6 million of the taxpayers' money is what they spent on my
to
case.
Destroy you.
$6 million.
And you need a pardon right away from Trump. But sorry. You're making me emotional. This is just too ridiculous. I've known you a while. I didn't know the details.
Yeah, it was ugly.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can hit the little bell on there and get notifications every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that also.